Hi everyone, you are Reddit exposed there, enjoy watching.
He found her letter 3 years later. Not in the mailbox. Not in old messages. It's in the book she gave him for his last birthday. There was an envelope with his name on it between pages 206 and 207, her favorite numbers. Inside there is one ticket for the Moscow, St. Petersburg train and a note. If you ever want to understand, get on this train. Just don't look for me at the end of the road. Look for yourself. The departure date is tomorrow. He boarded the indicated carriage. Place 14 is their number. Familiar landscapes were passing by the window, but something was wrong. There were no people at every station. Shadows of memories flickered in the windows. Their song was playing on the speakers, but the words were different. The conductor, an old man with a watch instead of I said, "You are not the first, not the last one, but maybe the only one who will make it." The train made stops in places that are not on the map. The first quarrel, an empty platform with a broken bottle of wine that very evening. Platform, flooded with amber light of lanterns last day. Platform with a single bench and its silhouette. She didn't turn around. In the end, the train came to the place where the rails ended. There was a calendar on the wall with the date of their breakup. Under it is a new ticket and her last words. Now you know where these rails lead. Throw away the ticket, or go on alone. The torn ticket scattered like silver dust at his feet. The wind picked it up and brought out the numbers in the air. 206 to 207. He looked up. There was an abandoned library in front of him. The one where they had first met. The door creaked by itself. The same book was on the lectern, but now it had a new title on the cover. You, Without Her. When he opened the book, the pages began to flip by themselves. Chapter 1. How to Forget Her Laughter. The text gradually disappeared. Chapter 14. Dreams, where she still exists. Ink flowed like tears. The last page was completely clean, but it felt wet to the touch. Suddenly, a key with a tag fell out of the binding. For those who decided to stay, the key fitted to a single door standing in the middle of the field. It turned out to be their first apartment, but all the things are in duplicate windows that reflected different versions of their lives. There are 2 cold cups of coffee on the kitchen table. There is a magnet on the refrigerator with the inscription, "Save what? Choose one." A photo of their first trip, her old toothbrush, an unfinished letter that he never sent. He took the photo, and it immediately burst into blue flames, turning into an ashen flower. At this moment, the toothbrush crumbled into dust. The letter added itself. "But I have learned to live with this pain." The door slammed shut, leaving him with a flower in his hand in the middle of the field. Epilogue. New pages a year later, in the same library. New book on the shelf. 206 Days Without You. Era is a dried silver flower on the table. A young couple is arguing at the lectern, completely oblivious to him. When he got out, the first snow fell on the tracks. A train rumbled in the distance. This time it's the usual one, and he didn't look after him. He returned to the library a year later. Now all the versions of their story were on the shelf. What if he had run after her? Then Green Down novel, Parallel Worlds, Without Us, black volume with empty pages. 206 days later, his diary, which he did not write. The librarian, the old lady who always sat at the entrance, handed him a new envelope for new readers. From you. There was a one-way ticket inside. Where to? Unknown. From whom? Someone who has learned to live with the answers. The train was waiting for him on the platform. But now, instead of the numbers on the carriages, there are the dates of their separation. Other people's stories flashed through the windows, but all with similar endings. There was a map with a single inscription in the glove compartment. "You're already here." He got on the train and found on the seat her old jacket, but now she wasn't wearing her perfume. A ticket with a hole, as in childhood. A book called The Next One with a blank last page. He woke up in an empty train. On his lap lay an open book, The Next One, in which new lines had now appeared. "When you read this, I'm already becoming a shadow. But look at the last page. There is a gift for those who have reached the end." The last sheet turned out to be mirror paper. In the reflection he saw myself, a teenager writing my first love letter. The current me with the ticket in my hand. Myself, an old man, planting railroad flowers at home. The train took him back to the library. But now, all the books on the shelves were empty. The ink in the pens dried up when trying to write. The clock above the entrance showed all time zones. At the same time, the old librarian handed him the key to the book storage. "There's what you were looking for." There was only one book in the vault, a thick folder labeled Our Unfinished Stories. In it, Theater tickets with erased dates, receipts from a cafe where they had never sat, photos of alternative versions of their lives. On the last page is an envelope with her real last letter. I didn't leave you pain, but a whole world. Choose any page and we'll start over, but only one. He flipped through the book and tore out an empty page. At this moment, all the photos came to life. Tickets were highlighted with the dates of future trips. The library has become the station of a new day, and there was a girl standing on the platform with a book in her hands, not her or the other one, but the one who was just waiting for her turn to go down in history, and came out of the library with an empty page in his hand. The wind picked her up and carried her to the lantern under which they had once kissed. The paper stuck to the wet glass, and his own words stood out on it, which he did not remember writing. I thought you left me in pain, but you left me all the unfinished love, so much that it will be enough for other lives. Suddenly, the lantern went out, and a train appeared in front of him, which was not on the schedule. Carriages made of worn book covers. Windows are like pages with fields for notes, doors with inscriptions. Chapter 1. Chapter 5. Chapter 14. The conductor, now a shadow with a dial instead of a face, asked, "Are you going or staying?" He looked at the blank page now pinned to the doors of the Chapter 14 carriage and stepped inside. Inside the carriage, the seats were made of old letter. Shelves are filled with bottled letters not read by anyone. Instead of windows, there are screens with alternative endings. He sat down and found a pen on the armrest. The inscription on it, "Finish it yourself." Suddenly, the train started moving, and all the screens went out. There was only one left, with a blinking cursor, as if waiting for input. He held the pen up to the glass and wrote, "And then I woke up." The train disappeared. He was standing on an empty platform, with the key to the library and a blank ticket in his pocket. In the distance, at the exit, the girl with the book turned around, but that was a completely different story. The platform was not just empty. It was erased at the edges, like an unfinished page. There was a smell in the air. Ink, her favorite purple iron, like from old rail cinnamon. As in the coffee shop where they first quarreled, there was a note on the bench, written in his handwriting, but not by him. I tried to burn all the letters. The only thing left is this, the last one you'll really read. The key went to the door to nowhere, the one that had always been in the depths of the book storage. Inside, shelves with ghost books covers are there. Pages are empty, ink lake in the middle, letters drowned in it, his reflection writing something on the wall. He came closer and saw, "Somewhere there is a version of us that." Then the text ended. When he turned around, there was a one-car train in the doorway, number 206, 207. She's in the window, but not her same smile. Different eyes on the sign. The final one is maybe the conductor, now a bookworm in uniform, hissed, "Sit down. This time, stop writing. It's time to read." In motion, the carriage turned into a book, a half map of all their quarrels, the ceiling, scenarios of failed reconciliations. The seats are intertwined, letters from other lovers. She handed him a pen with a broken tip. "Finish, you ass, or cross it out. Choose one." The true ending. He put the pen on the seat. The train crumbled into letters. There are only one sheet with her real last letter, one feather. Now whole one. He is standing on the platform of an ordinary train, and I have 2 tickets in my pocket for tomorrow. On the platform of an ordinary train, he was rereading that very letter in the morning light and suddenly noticed something that he had missed before. There is a tiny drawing in the corner of the sheet, their silhouettes against the train background. On the back is a watermark with the date today. In the text, the third sentence was not written in her handwriting. The conductor of an ordinary train, real, without dials, instead of eyes, asked, "Where are you going?" He showed the ticket. "Oh, is it for a long time?" "No." He smiled. "Just one life." There were people in the carriage, a student crossing out lines in a notebook, an old man doing a one-question crossword puzzle, a woman reading a book with empty pages. They weren't shadows, just people on their way to work in the morning. And it turned out to be scarier than all the ghost trains. When he got off at his bus stop, a girl with a book, the one from the library, accidentally bumped his shoulder. "I'm sorry." She picked up a fallen piece of paper. "Is this yours?" There were only 3 words on the paper. "Live. Don't finish writing." The wind blew the note away to where the rails end. He picked up the note, but the wind had already blown it far away to an abandoned mailbox on the edge of the platform. They were lying inside. An envelope without an address, with his fingerprint, a piece of newspaper with the date of their last meeting, a pencil sharpened on both sides. There is an engraving on the mailbox, for letters that will not find the addressee. Returning to the train, he found that all the passengers were now looking at him. The student finished writing his story in notebook. The old man is guessing his name in a crossword puzzle. A woman flips through a book with his photo on the cover. The conductor, still an ordinary one, handed over the ticket. Composter, destination. He silently showed me an empty ticket. The composter left an impression. Here. The girl with the book suddenly closed the volume and smiled. This is not her letter. Then whose is it? To myself. You wrote it yesterday. He opened the last envelope, the one from the mailbox. There was a mirror inside, and his reflection was finally smiling. The lights on the train suddenly went out. When the lights returned, all the passengers disappeared, and the walls of the carriage became mirrored. In the reflections he saw myself at the age of 20 holding an unsent letter, myself at the age of 40 clutching an undated ticket, myself at the age of 60 planting railway flowers. Speaker sound. The next station is the one who writes. The train plunged into a tunnel, the walls of which were covered with writing. Fragments of their dialogues. There are 206 endings in total, with her last phrase, which he did not hear at the time. Suddenly, the letters began to crumble, turning into butterflies made of blotting paper. An empty desk was waiting for him at the station, a typewriter, tickets instead of paper, a lamp with a shade from her dress, an inkwell with his tears instead of ink. There was a note on the chair. Who are you? The one who writes. The one they write about. Just a word on someone else's page. The key to the library turned out to be a one-way ticket. On the back, in a small handwriting, was written, "For those who have reached the end and realized that there is no end." He was standing on an empty platform, where the rails went up into the sky. The schedule consisted of one word. Now, instead of a loudspeaker, his own voice sounded, reading aloud that very book. A girl came up to him with an empty suitcase. "You've lost this," she said, holding out a mirror fragment from that very lantern. In the reflection he saw her, but it wasn't her anymore. The train, but it was no longer a car, but a metaphor. Himself, but it was no longer him, but just a man who is no longer afraid of the end. He tore the empty ticket in two. I blew one into the wind. It turned into snow. I put the other one in my pocket. It became the first page of a new book. The girl laughed. "You're free now." "From what?" "From having to search for the last letter." He woke up in his bed. They were lying on the bedside table. The key to the library, now rusty mirror fragment reflecting ceiling, a blank sheet, with a single line. This is not an epilogue. It's morning. Outside the window is an ordinary city. No lanterns, no ghost trains. Just the first snow on the roof, sand, and neighbor hanging laundry. The train smelled of coffee and wet coats. He opened the book, a regular one, bought yesterday at the store, and found a bookmark. Movie ticket, unused, dated today. On the flip side, for a new beginning, you only need one ticket. Yours. When he got off at the right stop, the girl from the library, now just a girl, accidentally dropped her book. "I'm sorry." She looked up. "Can you tell me how to get to the train station?" He smiled and led the way. He bought a coffee from a vending machine at the train station. Someone wrote on a paper cup, Chapter 23. The hero realizes that he has become an author. I found it in my coat pocket. Railway flower withered, but alive, a piece of newspaper with a crossword puzzle. All the words were their names, a clean envelope with the stamp local. Indefinite. The same girl was standing at the ticket counter. Now she was reading a new book with a green cover and had a key-shaped hairpin in her hair. On his wrist is a watch showing 1807. Their eyes met. "You," she began. "No." He smiled. "It's just a similar plot." When the train arrived, the conductor, a young woman with a notebook, asked, "Where are you going?" He held out an empty ticket. She muttered, "Oh, it's you," and punched a heart-shaped hole, and got into an empty carriage. There was a woman lying on the seat opposite, an open book. The pages are empty, but you can smell her perfume. A broken pen, the ink dried exactly 3 years ago. A ticket marked, "For those who travel alone." But not alone. Ghost stations were passing by the window. The first lie last. Sorry, the words we didn't say. An old man appeared in the doorway with a book instead of a face. His name is on the cover. On the spine is the date of their separation. All his unsent emails are on the pages. "The choice is yours," the old man said. "Should I finish it or burn it?" He ran his finger along the spine, and the book crumbled into railway flower petals. The train stopped in an open field. There was a single mailbox on a pole. Inside, photo, they're laughing, but their faces are blurred. Ring without engraving. His own passport stamp past all stations. In the special marks column, a new train roar in the distance. He reached into the mailbox and took out the key to the apartment. He never had. A telegram with the text, "Come back." My old diary. but all the pages were filled with her handwriting. On the last page of the diary was the date of tomorrow and one phrase, "Today I finally stopped writing letters to you." The train that had just left returned. But now it wasn't a train, but an old Volga, an exact replica of the one he'd once used to catch up with her at the station. The driver, his reflection in the rearview mirror, asked, "Are you going?" "Where?" "To where you forgot it was just a story." The car was driving on an empty highway. There were flashes on the side of the road. The beginning sign crossed out memory bus stop, but there is no bus cafe. The last line lights are on. That the doors are boarded up. The radio picked up one frequency, a whisper reading their correspondence aloud. He got into the Volga, and the car started off without the sound of an engine, just the rustle of pages under the wheels. The road led through landscapes that he recognized, a field of railroad flowers, each but opened, revealing a photo from the past inside. A bridge over a river made of ink and finished letters floated in the water, and one of them was signed with her name. An abandoned phone booth where the phone rang in his own voice from 20 years ago. The driver, his reflection, suddenly turned his head. There was no face in the mirror, just an empty page. "You still haven't answered her last question," said the reflection. "What kind of question? What will you keep?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out 3 items, the key to the library. Now he could open any door, but only once. A mirror fragment. It reflected not his appearance, but the inside. An empty room with a burning TV screen. A ticket with a heart-shaped hole on the back in small handwriting. "You don't need a return trip." The car stopped at the Last Chance Cafe. She was sitting at a table inside, but not her. Same smile, different look. In front of her stood a cup of cold coffee with his fingerprint on the saucer. A book called Our Misfortunes. All the pages were torn out, only the spine remained. A paper clip bent into a question mark. "You're 7 minutes late," the girl said. "That's exactly how long our last conversation lasted." He sat down opposite her. The table between them began to crack, and people began to crawl out of the cracks. Movie tickets that they haven't watched. Text message fragments with unsent words. Her earring. Lost in his car the day it ended. "Why did you come back? What is it?" she asked. "To finally get on that train." She laughed, and the cafe crumbled like a set. They were standing on a platform with no name. "There was a ticket map under my feet, where all the routes led to one point, U station." The train pulled up. This time it's modern, with transparent walls. Inside, the passengers were writing in notebooks, without even looking at him. The conductor, now a girl with green eyes, like that student from the train, handed over an undated ticket. "Where to?" "Home," he replied. The train started moving, passing by the window, the library, where there were books with his name on the shelves, an empty apartment with a calendar on the wall with a single day, tomorrow, the field where the railway flowers formed a phrase, "You're free." My phone rang in my pocket. Unknown number. He picked up the phone and heard his own voice, but in a different language. "Hello, this is me. From the life where we stayed together. You're needed there." The train disappeared. He was standing in front of the mirror in his apartment. There's an envelope on the table, new, dust-free. Inside, the photo. They are in a cafe, but the third person in the picture is himself, sitting at the next table. The key to the Volga, the car he never owned. A blank sheet with a signature in the corner. Chapter 207. Thunder rumbled outside the window. The first drop of rain fell on the windowsill and left a trail. 206 to 207. He went outside. The rain was erasing the city like an ink drawing. The girl with the book was standing in front of him, but now she was looking at him and smiling in a new way. "Are you here too?" he asked. "I'm always here. You just didn't notice." She handed him an umbrella red like that hairpin from the library. It was dry and quiet under the dome, and there was an engraving on a handle. "The end is the place where you stop looking for the beginning." They walked in the rain, which now seemed to be just rain, not a metaphor. And somewhere on the edge of the city, an old mailbox slammed shut by itself. The last letter was left inside, addressed to no one. His handwriting is on the envelope. They walked under a red umbrella, and the rain blurred the boundaries between memory and reality. "Where are we going? What is it?" he asked, noticing that the sidewalk under his feet was gradually becoming a rough page with margins for notes. "You chose it yourself." The girl pointed to the sign of the cafe across the street. There was a neon sign on it. "End of the route." There was no one inside except the bartender with empty eyes just like the conductor and a full-length mirror. In the reflection they saw his, but in the coat he wore 10 years ago. Hers, but with short hair, like on their last day. The third was a man in a hat, who was writing in a notebook without looking up. "Who's that?" "The author," the girl said, and unfolded the menu in front of him. Instead of dishes, there were the names of chapters of his life. Mistake 206: the day I missed the train, the words you never said. He ordered coffee with non-existent sugar. The bartender placed an empty cup in front of him, at the bottom of which lay the key to the Volga. "It's a ticket," the girl explained. On the way back, suddenly, the mirror cracked, and a hand appeared from the crack his hand, but in a different time. She was clutching a photo of them standing outside the same cafe, but in a different dimension. She was wearing the dress from that very evening. He was holding a flower that was now withered in his pocket. In the background is a train that shouldn't be here. The cafe began to dissolve. The tables turned into pages, the floor into a route map, and the bartender disappeared, leaving only purple ink, her favorite color, on the counter. The girl took his hand. "It's time to choose." 3 doors appeared in front of them. The door with the inscription "The Past." The sound of a typewriter could be heard behind it. The door was real. Through the glass you could see an ordinary city park where people were walking. The door, she was made of mirrors, and in each reflection he saw different versions of himself. "If I enter the past, will I be able to change it? No. You're just going to finish what you didn't have time for. And the real thing, this is the way out, that you'll forget about trains, libraries, and letters. And the third door." The girl smiled the way you smile when you tell the truth. "It's just you, without us, without a story. A clean sheet." He went to the mirrored door and touched the surface. The cold glass became water, and letters appeared through it. Chapter 1. The Man Who. Then the text ended. "Decide," the girl whispered, but her voice was already coming out of the speakers, like on that ghost train. He clutched the key to the Volga, the ticket for the return trip. He didn't choose any doors. Instead, he opened his hand and looked at the key to the Volga. He melted like sugar in coffee, leaving a scar on his skin in the shape of the number 207. The girl sighed, and the sound shattered reality. The cafe crumbled into letters. The doors were curled up into tubes, like damaged film reels. She became a shadow on the wall without light. It was just him, the rain, and a city that wasn't on the map. The city turned out to be made of forgotten things. Sidewalks are from the covers of diaries. The lanterns are made of glass inkwells. People, if you could call them, that walked backwards, as if they were rewinding time. There was a kiosk on the corner with a sign, "We sell endings." Behind the counter is an old man with the face of a librarian. "What do you want?" "What is it?" he asked, putting it on the table, a box labeled "Happy Ending" but empty inside. Rusty scissors for cutting threads. One-way ticket route to where you weren't yourself. "I need to." He stopped, realizing that he didn't know what he wanted. Then here, the old man took out a mirror ball from under the counter, as in discos. It reflected all his possible lives. In one, he caught up with her at the train station. In another, he burned all the letters. In the third, they were growing old together, but there was the same longing in her eyes. "Choose," the old man whispered. He touched the ball and the city disappeared. "I woke up in a room where the walls are made of book spines. Half of them are from torn tickets. The ceiling is made of screens where their last conversation was repeated. There is a table in the center. On him, the camera contains one undeveloped film, a mug of cold tea with her lipstick on the bottom, a pistol but instead of bullets, rolled up notes. There was only one door. In the ceiling, there were no stairs. He put the camera on the table and pulled the trigger. The flash blinded him. When his vision returned, he was standing in his apartment. On the table, a clean sheet, a pen, a ticket for the Moscow St. Petersburg train date. Tomorrow. A kettle was whistling outside the window. Neighbor was cooking breakfast. Their song was playing on the radio, but now the words were right. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. He opened it. There was a girl standing on the threshold, not her, not the library one, but the new one. In his hands is a book with a green cover. "Excuse me, is this yours?" He looked at the title. Chapter 208. "No." He smiled. "But it's mine now." A curtain